If you look in the book of Yecheskel, Tammuz, our month, Rabbi Yaakov named Tammuz, is named after a idol of Babylon. It's like calling the month J.C. Penney or
they're going under. You don't want to.
Baal or what? Baal Peor, right? Now Baal Peor, it's very strange. Rashi said the parsha that we read yesterday. How do you worship the Baal Peor, Rivka? How you defecate in front of it? Isn't that disgusting? The Baal Peor. If you have diarrhea, you're a real chassid. Anyone who has diarrhea is a real chassid of the Baal Peor, Avram, without a shreimel. He really knows how to worship that Getchke Baal Peor. Perhaps that's where the expression Rivka, bowel movement. Ooh. Bowel movement. Don't you get it, Abraham? Bowel movement. Bowel movement. Bowel movement. That's where it comes from. Baal Peor. Right? So all of the Hasidim, they all had diarrhea of this Getchke, Baal Peor. Very strange. How did Pinchas end the plague? With a spear. He made her a shiksabab. Get it? Shiksabab. Oy. Okay. All right. Now, getting back to why we name our month Tammuz. There's a pasuk in Pashas Mishpatim, Exodus 23, says, "D'shem Elohim acherim lo taskiru, lo yishama al picha." Exodus 23 says that you're not permitted to mention the name of what? Of an Avodah Zarah. So, why do we name a month after Avodah Zarah when the pasuk in Exodus 23 says you're not permitted to mention the name of an Avodah Zarah? V'shem elohim acherim lo taskiru lo yishama al picha. So anyway, the Gemara in Sanhedrin 63 asked this question. So the Gemara answers, how could you mention Baal Peor? The Torah mentions in the parsha that we worship Baal Peor. Doesn't that contradict Exodus 23, where you're not permitted to what? To mention the name of Avodah Zarah. So the Talmud in Yevamot 63 asked this question. And the Talmud answers that if the name of the Avodah Zarah is mentioned in Tanakh, then what? You're permitted. So since Baal Peor is mentioned in Tanakh, since Tammuz is mentioned in the book of Yecheskel, so therefore it would be permitted a molech. So any Avodah Zarah that is mentioned in Tanakh is permitted to what? To be said. But if it's not mentioned in Tanakh, then you're not allowed to say the Avodah Zarah. So instead of saying Buddha, I would say Fat Boy. Or instead of saying Yoshki, you say J.C. Penney, right? You're not permitted to mention of name of Avodah Zarah that's not written in Tanakh. Exodus 23, verse 13 says so. But if it's mentioned in Tanakh, you're permitted. But still, there's no mitzvah okay, you're allowed to Chaim say it. Tammuz is Yecheskel. But it's still pretty bizarre that Ezra HaSofer would name, these names came from Ezra HaSofer, the book of, you look in the book of Ezra, that he would name what? A month after Avodah Zarah. Why would he do that? So to answer this question, of course, we would have to what? Ask another. So if you take a look at your sheets on side number 1. You have a sheet, Abraham? Good. Side number 1. To answer this question, we're going to ask another. On side number 1, on the left side, it's underlined, says Rish Lakish. You see that? You don't have it underlined? I think there's an X. Is there an X there? X marks the spot. Side number 1, left side where it says Rish Lakish. There's an X there, right? Rish Lakish, he lived in Eretz Yisrael. He was the chief rabbi of Tiberias. He was taking a shvim in the Jordan River. He was cooling off. It was a hot day like today, so the chief rabbi, they didn't have any indoor showers in those days, so he went to take a shower, a bath in the Jordan River. Also, Rabbi Bar Bachana. So a great rabbi from Borough Park, from Bavel, came to visit Rish Lakish. And he saw him what? is swimming in the water coming out of the river. Yevle Yoda. So the great rabbi from Bavel extended a hand to Rish Lakish to help him what? The great rabbi out of the water. And he gave him his bathrobe, right? Omalei, instead of saying thank you, what does Rish Lakish say, the chief rabbi of Tiberias? What does he say to Rabbi Bar Bachana, the chief rabbi of what? Bavel. He said, Eloha. Eloha means he swears by God. You hear? Or Sinan Elocho, that God hates you. What? God hates you Babylonians. What? That's a proper answer. He swears by God, or he says, God hates you Babylonians. Why does God hate you Babylonians? Because, what?
Because he didn't make Aliyah.
Because when Ezra gave the call to make Aliyah, you guys were what? Out to lunch. Look at footnote 36. You see? Rashi, footnote 36, Rabbi Yaakov. You have that? Ba'aliyah Rishonah, when Koresh gave them permission to make Aliyah, out of millions of Jews in Bavel and in Persia, only 42,360 Jews, what? Answered the call. Wow. The majority of world Jewry during the Second Temple period lived where? In Babylon, Long Island. In Babylon. Now, if you look at the book of Ezra, the temple was already built. There was not enough Kohanim and Levites to run the Beis HaMikdash. Eze busha v'cherpa. Temple is standing, and the Levites and Kohanim remained in Babylon, Long Island. So the book of Ezra says Ezra had to go back to Borough Park, back to Babylon, put an ad in the Jewish press. Kohanim and Levites wanted, because there's a temple waiting, the Eze busha v'cherpa. Okay? So therefore, this is hundreds of years after Ezra. This is about Abraham, about 500 years after Abraham, after Ezra. Rish Lakish lived about 1900 years ago. Ezra was what? 2,400 years ago. So this is how many years later? 500. About 500 years later. So he says that God hates you because of you Babylonians who did not make Aliyah. That's why the second temple was destroyed. Do you hear this? How does he know that? The rabbi from Borough Park didn't expect such a greeting, right? There's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. I'm continuing to read. There's a pasuk in Shir Hashirim. Im chaymahi nivna leo tiras kosef. If the Jewish people come back like a wall, a mighty surge, then the second temple will be like what? Kesef. Kesef is a silver palace. Silver does not rot. It doesn't decay. Vim delet, but if the Jewish people come back under Ezra like delet from the word dal, like a nebish, miskenim, a few here and that, then what? Not soleh luach erez. Then the second Beis HaMikdash will be a wooden bungalow. You hear? Wood rots. So he's explaining what I just said. This is Rish Lakish, the rabbi from Babylon, was shocked. If you make aliyah, asitem atzmechem kachoma. When you come back the second time, like a mighty wave, like a mighty wall, valitem kulchem b'mei Ezra, and all of you Jews would have what? Come back on the days of Ezra. Nimshaltem kakesef, the second temple would have been like silver. She'ein rokav shailet ba, silver never rots, it doesn't decay. So the second temple never would have been destroyed. Over. See, it says over. Achshav, but now, shalitem kadalotot, he came back like the word dal in Hebrew means what? Nebech. Right? Therefore, the second temple is like what? A wooden hut. Shaharokov shoiletba. That decay will what? Be able to destroy it. Isn't that incredible? You know that if you look in the end of the book of Yecheskel, Yecheskel gave the dimensions of the third temple. But Ezra already had the plan. because Yechezkel lived a little before him. Ezra already had that nevuah and Nehemiah. So how come they didn't build the second temple according to Yechezkel's vision of the third temple? They already had it. Beautiful, Rabbi Aaron. Because they knew that Yechezkel's temple is going to be the final temple. And they knew from the get-go that out of millions of Jews, only 42,000 came back. Eze busha v'cherpa. There was not enough Kohanim or Levites to run the Beis HaMikdash. Therefore, the Shechina was not revealed. No Malchus Beis David. No Ark. No Luchot. No Shemen HaMishcha. The second temple was a miskein compared to what? The first temple. Why? Because we were out to lunch. So therefore, Ezra and Nehemiah knew that the second temple is going to be destroyed. How did they know? Because nobody was interested. Out of millions of Jews, only 42,000 came back. So they knew that Yechezkel's temple, Abraham, can only be built if the majority of world Jewry would have come back under what? Under what? Under Ezra. Since they were not interested in coming back, they knew they could not build the temple according to Yechezkel's plan, because they knew from the get-go that the second temple is going to be destroyed. If the Jewish people would have come back in waves, then the second temple would have been what? The last temple. Then Yechezkel's temple would have been the final. You wouldn't need a third temple. You see, we cannot cancel God's game plan. We can push it off for a few thousand years. So Ezra could have been the Messiah. The second temple could have been Yechezkel's temple. No Holocaust, no bus bombings, no rioting. But the Jews were not interested. So therefore Ezra knew that this temple was going to be destroyed because nobody was home. Chil Hashem. The Shechina wasn't there, the Ark wasn't there, the Luchas weren't there. So he had no right to what? Build it according to Yechezkel, because Yechezkel's temple is going to be what? The final temple. It could have been the second. But now it's going to be the third. So therefore he had no right to build it, because Yechezkel's temple is the indestructible final temple. But the point is that Mashiach could have come 2,400 years ago. The Vilna Gaon says Mashiach can only come after the majority of Jews in Chutz La'aretz come to Eretz Yisrael. So according to the Vilna Gaon, every Jew who makes Aliyah hastens the Mashiach's coming. Isn't that amazing?
Aren't we a majority now?
Not yet. In about 25 years, according to the Jerusalem Post, the majority of world Jewry will be here. Then Mashiach will have to come. I think about 25, 30 years. We're getting very close. So anyway, let me just finish my thought over here. So therefore, Mashiach didn't come. Therefore, the second temple had to be built like a wooden bungalow. From the get-go, they knew it's going to be destroyed, so they could not use Yechezkel's plan, which they already had. It could have been. And that's why Rish Lakish tells the Babylonians, God hates you. Because of you, the Messiah did not come 2,400 years ago. And if he would have come then, the second temple never would have been destroyed. There wouldn't be a second Tisha B'Av. There would be no what? Holocaust. And no pogroms and all the terrorism. That's a direct result of what? Of the Chorban Bayis Sheni. Question.
It says here, when if they came up as a choma.
A choma, right?
Isn't there an oath that says if we come up as a choma, we can't come up as a choma?
First of all, my friend, that's an Agadata Gemara. Okay? Now, Rabbi Aaron, the Ramban, in his disputation at Barcelona, the Israel Center will be showing that film next week or this week. It's called The Disputation at Barcelona. This is an actual account, a diary kept by the great Ramban, who debated Pablo Cristiani in the year 1263 in Aragon, Spain, in front of King James. And this Pablo Cristiani was a Geshmada Jew, a Jew that knew the Talmud, became a Franciscan monk or a friar monk, and the worst Jew haters are what? So he challenged the Ramban to a debate, and he knew the Talmud. And he kept quoting Aggadic passages to prove that the Messiah had already come. So the Ramban, the great Ramban, laid down the law that the Talmud consists of two sections, Halacha, Abraham, and Agadah. Michael, only the halachic part of the Talmud must be taken literally. The Agadah part of the Talmud is not permitted to be taken literally. The Ramban told us that, and he was one of the giant Rishonim. So therefore, any statement in the Agadah, like the Jews made an oath, or God made an oath, that's Agadah. It's not found anywhere in any of the Rambam or any other halachic code. You're not permitted to take Agadah part of the Talmud literally. Only the halachic part must be taken literally. There are many examples of this. The Talmud says that Moshe Rabbeinu was 10 amos tall. That means he played for the NBA. Moshe Rabbeinu was 10 amos tall. What? So the Marsha already says that's not to be taken literally. Even in English, we have an expression, wow, that guy's 10 feet tall. Do we mean he's 10 feet tall? Says the Marsha, since he gave us the 10 commandments, in our eyes he appeared what? 10 feet tall. But that's only an allegorical statement, not to be taken literally. And there are hundreds of examples like that. Therefore, you cannot study Talmud strictly with the art scroll. You need a teacher to know which part of the Talmud must be taken literally and which part of the Talmud surely is not permitted to be taken literally. So therefore, the Satmar say there's an oath, we swore, God swore. That's an Agadah Gemara, not to be taken literally. Okay. So anyway, the Talmud says here clearly if the Jewish people would have come back as a mighty wall in waves, the second temple never would have been what? Destroyed. So therefore, the Shlokish tells this great rabbi from Babylon, Long Island, God hates you. Because of you, there had to be a second Chorban, and all that comes after that. Pogroms, Holocaust, terrorism, that's a direct growth of what? Result of what? Chorban Bayit Sheni. They didn't have to be a Chorban Bayit Sheni, Rivka, if the Jews would have come back like a mighty wall in the days of Ezra.
But isn't that a Agadah?
What?
Isn't this a Agadah?
No, this is an actual story. It's not. That's why you need a teacher. So you need a teacher. You just can't read the art scroll. You need a teacher, Nechama. The Torah shel Baal Peh, you need the teacher-student relation. Even when the Gemara was written down, because people were getting verstoppt the cup, it was written down in such a way that without the teacher-student connection, there's no way that you can what? Understand it. Okay? So this part of the Talmud is an actual story, and this actually happened, and therefore, Rish Lakish, instead of greeting this great rabbi, he what? I think it's called in English, he ranked him out. Huh? Wow. He outranked him or he ranked him out? Anyway, so getting back to our question of why Ezra adopted these Babylonian names of the month. Now, in the Torah, the Chama, there's no names. It's called Chodesh HaRishon, Chodesh HaSheni, Chodesh HaShlishi, Chodesh HaRevi, right? The Torah, just like the names of the days have no name. Yom Rishon, Yom Sheni, Yom Shlishi, right? The creation, there's no names. It's just first day, second day, third day. So too, in the Torah, the names of the month have no names. They have numbers. Chodesh HaRishon, Chodesh HaSheni, Chodesh HaShlishi. The names were imported from Babylon and instituted into the Hebrew calendar by Ezra HaSofer, no less. The great Ezra HaSofer, the Navi, the Kohen Gadol, who the Talmud says in Sanhedrin 23, if God would not have given the Torah, Abraham, through Moshe Rabbeinu, who would be his second choice? Ezra. So why would this great man use Babylonian pagan names instead of what? Chodesh HaRishon, Chodesh HaSheni. So the Ramban asked this kasha. And to answer this kasha, he what? Asked another kasha. Why is the month of the Exodus called Chodesh HaRishon? And the second month is called Chodesh HaSheni? And the third month is called Chodesh HaShlishi? He says why? to remember the Exodus, that the Jewish people were created in the month that we were redeemed. So to remember the Exodus, therefore, the month of the redemption is called what?
Nisan.
Not Nisan, Chodesh HaRishon. Don't mix me up. And the second Chodesh HaSheni, everything is focused on what? On the main event. The main event. It's not Chodesh HaRishon. The world was created on the 7th month, Tishrei. But we count Chodesh HaRishon, says the Ramban. That's when God redeemed us. So to focus and remember the Exodus from Egypt, we name our months 1, 2, 3, 4, harking back, focusing on the main event, the Exodus from Egypt, which took place when? On Chodesh HaRishon. So when you count first month, Exodus. Second, third, fourth month? Fourth month from what? What month are we in now? Tammuz is the fourth month, right? Fourth month from what? From the Exodus. And next month will be the fifth month. The fifth month from what? The Exodus, first month. So to focus, the Exodus is the main event in Judaism. To focus on that constantly, therefore, the Torah names the months what? Numbers. Says the Ramban, there was a second Exodus. 70 years after Chorban Bayis Rishon, there was a new Moses. And a second Exodus. Who's the new Moses? Ezra. And there was a second Exodus. Instead of millions of people leaving Egypt, only 42,000 Jews left what? Babylon. So to remember the second Exodus, therefore what, Rabbi Yaakov? We named them Babylonian months. That Ezra says, what am I, chopped liver? There was a second Exodus. Yes, a second Exodus. So to play up the second Exodus and the second Moses, Ezra, therefore he gave them Babylonian months, that for 70 years we were in Golus Bavel, and God brought us back home, even though only 42,000 came. How are you going to remember you were in Golus Bavel? Tammuz, Av, Elul, they're all Babylonian names. So just like the numbers in the Torah of the months remind us of the first Exodus, the Babylonian names remind us that just like God redeemed us from Egypt, he also redeemed us what? From Babylon under the new Moses, second Moses, what? Ezra. Okay? Is that good? All of them are Babylonian months. You can look in the book of Ezra and Megillas Esther. You'll see that all of them are Babylonian months. But go so far as to use a Getchkim name. Okay, so a Babylonian name reminds me of Exodus. But why mention a pagan deity, Tammuz? Yes?
What percentage came back?
Well, who's good in math? There were millions of Jews living in Bavel and Paras. Only 42,360 came back. What's that? Less than a... There were millions of Jews. Ask Rabbi Wein. He's a great historian. There were millions of Jews living in Paras and Bavel. So, okay, so 42,000 are mere pittance. But it was an Exodus. Mashiach could have come then. Ezra could have been the Messiah. So to remember that Exodus, therefore Ezra adopted what? Babylonian names. But that doesn't answer why he would use a Getchka name, an idol name, Tammuz, yes?
Why don't we change it now that we come back?
Good thing you came, Chaim. Okay, stay tuned. We'll talk about that. Okay, we'll talk about that. So to answer this question, we're going to what? Look at side number 2. You see Rabbi Yehuda Halevi? Side number 2 says that Yehuda Halevi explains why Mashiach did not come after the Purim miracle. All the Jews became Haredi, right? That's what it says in Megillas Esther. They all became Haredi, all the Jews became religious. So after the Purim miracle, how come Mashiach didn't come? So God was ready to bring Mashiach if the Jews of Paras and Bavel would then have come to Eretz Yisrael. But only a few returned, says Yehuda Halevi, while the majority and the leaders, Mordechai and Esther, remained where? In Persia, preferring to serve Achashverosh and unwilling to leave their fancy houses and their affairs. And therefore God's name is not in the Megillah. Why is God's name not in the Megillah? It's the only book of Tanakh where God's name is not in the Megillah. Where did the Purim miracle happen? In Babylon, right? Paras, Slicha. Today, the borders are falling apart. The borders of what? Is Assyria today, Iraq, Iran. What was Paras and what's Bavel? Persia is Iran. Bavel is what? Iraq. What's going on? So why is God's name not in the Megillah? The Gemara in Ksubas, page 110 says, Kol adar b'chutz la'aretz kimi she'ein lo Elohai. Any Jew that lives outside of Israel, even in Lakewood, is like what? He has no God. You hear? Kol she'ein adar be'etz Yisrael, the Gemara says again, Ksubas 110 side B, whoever does not live in Israel is like what? He's godless. So since the Megillah, the miracle happened where? In Paras. So therefore God's name is not there. Because if you live outside of Israel, it's like you have no God. And therefore you don't say Hallel when? Purim. What am I, chopped liver? Hanukkah gets a Hallel. Purim was a greater miracle. Right? Greater than Hanukkah, wasn't it? Because in Hanukkah, we were not facing physical destruction, right? We would have survived as a people. Purim, we were facing physical annihilation. What a great miracle. How come you don't say Hallel, Abraham? Why? Because the nest happened in Chutz La'aretz. So therefore, whoever lives outside of Israel has no God. So therefore, since the Megillah, the miracle took place where? Outside of Israel, Chava. Therefore what? God's name is not where? In the Megillah. Okay? Now, Mashiach was ready to come 2,400 years ago. Right? It's too bad that living in Eretz Yisrael is not a chumrah. Because in Borough Park in Lakewood, they all like chumras. Right? They all have extra chumras. Too bad living in Israel is not a chumrah. Because if it was only a chumrah, they'd come. It's only a mitzvah. It's only a mitzvah. And the Sifri says, Shakula mitzvat yeshivat Eretz Yisrael keneget kol ha-mitzvah shebetorah. That the mitzvah of living in Israel is equal in importance, Rabbi Yaakov, like all the mitzvahs of the Torah. So this was written in the Sifri 2,000 years ago. So you might think, well, that was in those days. Maybe it doesn't apply today. If you look at the Pischei Tshuva, the Pischei Tshuva was written about 200 years ago. He's a great posek. Everybody, Baruch Hashem, accepts him. Ashkenazim, Svardim, Lutvaks, Hasidim. They all accept the Pischei Tshuva. I don't know what his name is, but he lived about 200 years ago, and he writes in Even Oezer, Siman Ayin Hey, one of the 4 books of the Shulchan Aruch is called Even Oezer. And there in chapter 75 he writes that the mitzvah of living in Israel is equal to all the other mitzvahs, af bezman hazeh, even today. You hear? Now everybody follows the Pischei Tshuva. For some reason, this mitzvah a lot of people don't follow, that living in Israel is the most important mitzvah, says the Pischei Tshuva, Even Oezer, Siman Ayin Hey, af bezman hazeh. Even today, living in Israel is what? Buy one, get 613. So Jews love bargains, right? Even in Borough Park, they love bargains. Buy one, get 613. So too bad living here is only a mitzvah, not a chumrah. And what kind of mitzvah? Anyway, so getting back, what has it got to do with us? What has it got to do with us? So Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky Zatzal, my Rosh Yeshiva, said as follows. You know why? What? No, it's in the Even Oezer. This is not Shulchan, this is Gemara. This is a Gemara in Yuma. You got to look in one of the 4 sections of Shulchan Aruch is called Even Oezer. It deals with laws of marriage and divorce. And chapter 75 in the Pischei Tshuva, one of the commentaries of Shulchan Aruch, Pischei Tshuva lived about 200 years ago. He's a superstar posek accepted by all Yidden, Streimels, Kippur, Saruga, Svardim, Ashkenazim, they all accept him. And he says that the mitzvah to live in Israel is the greatest of all mitzvot, af bezman hazeh. So anyway, the Gemara also says, in Ksubas, page 110, Kol adar b'chutz la'aretz kilu oved avodah zarah. A shocking statement. Tractate Ksubot, page 110, side B. First it says, whoever lives outside of Israel is like he has no God. And then it says, whoever lives outside of Israel, ki'ilu oved avodah zarah. Say what? So therefore, we, Ezra, named the month Tammuz as a knas. A knas means a penalty. You Jews like Chutz La'aretz so much, we're going to call the name of the month Tammuz. It's a knas, a reminder of the shame and the disgrace that when Ezra gave the call to come and make Aliyah, there wasn't even enough Kohanim or Levites to run the Beit HaMikdash. So to put that disgrace in front of us, to remind us of what could have been, therefore Ezra called these Babylonian names and even the name of an idol, because whoever lives outside of Israel, says the Gemara, whoever lives in Chutz La'aretz, Kol Adar b'Chutz La'aretz, Ki'ilu Oved Avodah Zarah. So therefore, we call it Tammuz of Avodah Zarah. Raka Kodeski Zal said as a knas, that Ezra, to reminder of the shame that the Jewish people could have brought the Messiah. The second temple could have been what, Abraham, the final temple. And because we remained in Chutz La'aretz, which is like living what? Under idolatry, therefore, to remind us of our shame, what could have been, therefore what? Ezra instituted the names of the Babylonian what? Even an idol. No, the other names are not idols. The other names are just Babylonian names. But if you dig far back, I mean like Saturday, Saturn, Saturday, Monday, Sunday, Sunday, Moon Day, Saturn Day, Thursday, okay? What? Wednesday, what? Wednesday. What's that? I don't know. But when Mashiach comes, no more Tammuz. We'll once again call this month Chodesh HaRavi, because we'll go back to the future. The shame and the stigma will be removed, and they'll be no longer have to be reminded of what? Of our disgrace. And once again, this month won't be called Tammuz. It won't be called July. It'll be called what? Chodesh HaRavi, like you have in Tanakh. Okay? But until then, we have to live with the shame and the stigma that the Jews didn't come back.
So why is this one Tammuz called after an idol and the others aren't?
The other are all Babylonian names. But again, it's a stigma.
Could it be because of the Meraglim?
I don't know. The Meraglim came back on Tisha B'Av.
No, but they left.
The Meraglim, when they left, you're right, they left in Tammuz. They came back, 40 days later? Very good. They came back Tisha B'Av. Okay? But anyway, how does the Talmud know, Nechama? Every statement in the Talmud has to have a source where? In the Torah. How does the Talmud know that anyone who lives outside of Israel is like he has no God? How does the Talmud know that? Says the Ramban, if you look in Parshas Vayetze, Yaakov Avinu wakes up from his dream. Remember the ladder, moving on up, moving on down, you make the call, right? He wakes up and he makes a neder. He says what? If God will take care of me and bring me back to my father's house, v'hoya Hashem le'elohim. V'haya in Hebrew is Lashon Atid. So the Ramban said, what's Yaakov saying? He should have said, what do you mean, you will be my God? Now you're not my God. What does Yaakov say? Look at the text over there. When God brings me back to my father's house, where's my father's house? Beersheba. By the way, last night under rocket attack, Beersheba, our peace partners. Not a shooting in Beersheba. So Yaakov says, when you bring me back to my father's house in Beersheba, v'hoy Hashem le'elohim. Only then will God be my God. And now he's not my God? Only when you bring me back to my father's house, says the Ramban, this is the source in the Talmud, surely, that anyone who lives outside of Israel is like what? Because Yaakov's saying, I'm going to Ocean Parkway now. Where's he going? He's going to Syria, not Atlantic City. He's going to Syria. Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn, there's a lot of Syrians. So Nebuch, Only when I come back to my father's house in Beersheba, so only then will he be my God. So it's a pasuk in the Torah that someone who lives what? Outside of Israel is like what? Father Jacob said it. So don't confuse me with the facts, but that's the facts. Yes, Shirley?
What halachic basis
Yes?
did that the Satmar Rebbe of today say that the kids were killed because their parents lived in the
What is he, a Navi? He's a prophet?
What?
Is he a prophet?
No, but
So how does he know?
I said halachic basis.
How could you even pay attention to what he said?
I know.
Him and his brother were involved in a monetary dispute of millions of dollars. Millions of dollars. And you're supposed to take a monetary dispute to a Bezdin. It's a chil Hashem to go to a Goyish Bezdin. So him and his brother, where did they go? To New York State Supreme Court. Him and his brother, Eze Chil Hashem, the New York Post and the Daily News had a field day. These two Hasidic Rebbes took their millions of dollar monetary dispute when the father died. They're fighting over millions of dollar Yerusha. So they went to the New York State Supreme Court. So listen to Chil Hashem. The judge was a Jew. He said, what are you coming to me for? Don't you have a Bezdin? A judge, a secular Jewish judge. You could read this in the Post and the Daily News about 2 years ago.
So they both had to...
You hear? The judge says, aren't you grand rabbis? What are you coming to a secular court for? The Shulchan Aruch says, if a Jew takes another Jew to a secular court, it's a chil Hashem. So one Rebbe took the other to a secular court. So what kind of Rebbe? What are you even paying mind to them? Huh? It's a chil Hashem. And the fighting between the two groups over money, millions of dollars, an empire. Who pays attention what they say? Just because he wears a get-up. It's ridiculous. It's a chil Hashem. But go to a Yiddish court. You have a monetary dispute, go to a Yiddish court. Rashi in Chumash says, Eila Mishpatim. If you take a case, one Jew to another, to a Goyish court, it's a chil Hashem. Don't they learn Rashi, Sharon, and Rashi and Chumash? Right? So the Supreme Court judged a secular Jew had to say, what are you coming to me? Go to your Bezdin. But they didn't listen. Anyway, they spend millions of dollars on lawyers. They're still not finished. Millions of dollars on lawyers. Those are two great rabbis. The Sinna, the Kinna, the fist fights between the two groups. It's unbelievable. The old man kicked the bucket, right? And didn't leave the will too clear. So they're fighting over it, the top-notch lawyers. So you're taking anything they say seriously? I don't know, but anyway, these are, what are they, nephews, whatever, I don't know. But anyway, yes?
With your permission, I'd like to add something about that particular Pitzchei Tshuva.
Pitzchei Tshuva. Even Ezra, Siman, Ayin, Hey. Go ahead.
It deals with divorce.
That's correct.
It says that one part of a couple wants to
Right.
divorce Israel,
And the other doesn't.
so they, if it's
One can sue the other for divorce.
and the husband doesn't,
Right.
they can force him to divorce her and give her the Ktubah.
Correct.
But he goes on to add,
Go ahead.
that's why it's only a couple hundred years ago. He goes on to add,
Go ahead.
he elaborates and says, you see people nowadays traveling back and forth all over Europe and going there yourself on business.
Yeah.
And therefore they have no excuse to say it's too tough to go on our
Right. Right.
traveling already.
That's right. It's about 200 years ago. But what amazing mitzvah tzrichas kavanah. We have to have in mind, Mickey, that every minute that we live here, we're doing what mitzvah? Shkula keneget kol ha-mitzvah shebetorah. Buy one, get 613. Afilu b'zman hazeh. Chayim, mitzvah tzrichas kavanah. Wow. I'm glad I'm here. Wow. Yes?
I'll tell you a story briefly.
Go ahead.
Rabbi Kitov,
Go ahead. Right. Nachon, nachon.
You know this story?
I know the story, right. Nachon, nachon.
So,
Right.
The Choshev Arov,
Right.
the girls
The girls are not dressed snius.
News, yes.
So Rabbi Kitov said, what are you focusing on that? Noch a mitzvah, noch a mitzvah. Every step you take in Israel is another mitzvah. So the great rabbi said to the rabbi of Borough Park, what are you looking at the negative side? Where else, every step that you take, what? A mitzvah. Imagine the joggers. Mitzvah, nacha mitzvah. Mitzvah strichas kavana, right, Chaim? You got to remind them, right? Where else can you jog and get nacha mitzvah, right? I told you, Rav Bulman, Zechus HaGevrocha, told me, the great Rav Bulman, when he first came to Israel, every step he stopped, said mitzvah, nacha mitzvah. He was so excited, he was in the street yelling, but then he stopped doing it because people were looking at him funny. Rav Bulman, Zechus HaGevrocha, every step, nacha mitzvah, I'm so excited. But he stopped doing it, he became self-conscious, he said, the great tzaddik. You know, people looked at him funny, but he said, why did I stop? So what, they look at me funny? Nacha mitzvah! Right? The great Rav Bulman, yeah. Nacha mitzvah. That's right, you go to the marathon. What? Nacha mitzvah. Okay, very interesting, right? Right. What? I don't know. Kum hitalech ba'aretz. God tells Abraham, kum hitalech ba'aretz. Get up and what? Walk the land. If he's only speaking to Abraham, wouldn't be in the Torah, because the Torah is not a history book. We don't need to know what God told Abraham 3,800 years ago. We need to know what he's speaking to us. So God is speaking to us through Abraham, that a Jew has to walk the land, explore the land, and every step is nacha mitzvah. God says, kum, get up, et halech ba'aretz. Walk the land. Right? This land is my land. What? Nomi Shemer wrote about that? Kum et halech ba'aretz. The first mitzvah given to the first Jew, lech lecha me'artzecha, wasn't Brit Milah. It wasn't Shabbos. The first mitzvah Nechama given to the first Jew, Abraham, make aliyah. The first mitzvah given to the first Jew. Brit Milah came many, many years later. Right? So when Abraham got here, there was no nefesh benefesh. Right? There was no mishvat aklita, and there was no elal either. There was a famine when he came here. And he had to pack up and go to Cairo. Right? What? Did he do wrong? The Ramban said he did wrong. The Ramban said he did wrong. Rashi says no. Ein somchin ala nes. You don't rely on miracles. The Ramban says he should have trusted that God would not let him starve. The Ramban says that. Rashi says ein somchin ala nes. You're not supposed to what? Rely on miracles. So Abraham went to Mitzrayim. See, even according to the Ramban that he did wrong, did he fail the test? The Mishnah says he passed every test. 10 trials and he passed them all with flying colors. One test was he came here and there was a famine. Right? No food coupons. No B'tuach Leumi. No food stamp. No B'tuach Leumi. The Ramban says he did wrong, that he went to Cairo. But the Mishnah says he passed all tests. So even according to the Ramban, that he did wrong, he still passed the test. Because he never broke faith with Hashem. He never broke faith with Hashem. I'm supposed to make ishtadlut. There's no job here, I have to go to make parnasa, and then when the job opens up, so I'll come back. Even according to the Ramban, the Mishnah says he passed the test. Because even when he did wrong, according to Ramban, he never broke faith with Hashem. It's another test, and Hashem wants me to make ishtadlut on my level, right? When the going gets tough, the tough get going or go shopping. You make the call. He never doubted Hashem. He said, Gamzu l'tova. He said, Father knows best. Remember that program? Father knows best. What a program. They don't make them like they used to. Avram, remember that? That a message. That's Judaism. Judaism is Father knows best.
What was the name of the star Father says best?
Robert Young. Robert Young. They don't make them like they used to, Sharona. Father knows best. Avraham Berkowitz, that's Judaism in 3 words. Father knows best. Why did God allow the kidnappings? I don't know. Only He knows. There's no prophets today. Right? We trust that God, whatever God does is for the best, but one thing I'll tell you, were our prayers rejected? No. I'll prove it to you. We think that when we pray, we're trying to change God's mind. We're trying to change God. God is perfect. He knows exactly what we need. When I pray, I'm not trying to change Him. He is perfect. I'm trying to change myself. I'm trying to change myself. Prayer. Make me a better person. This ordeal should make me a better person. And didn't it make us a better person?
Yes.
The last few weeks, Jewry was united as never before. Hasidim, Snagdim, Orthodox, Reform, we all came together with such incredible achdut. Didn't we change for the better? Even Yair Lapid, the finance minister, announced that he went to shul and davened for the youngsters the first time he went to shul in 6 years. And he bought a pair of tefillin. The secular finance minister, Lapid, publicly announced that he went to shul to daven for these youngsters and he bought a pair of tefillin, Chaim. Did our prayers rejected? No. Didn't we change for the better? Of course we did. What the Chama?
One of the mythologists
Go ahead.
said that the three in Shemayim before they were born
Right.
chose to be in this martyr.
The Zohar says that the Neshamas, great Neshamas volunteer to come down to be martyrs to speed up the messianic
Exactly.
the messianic process. That's the Kabbalim say, that great neshamas do that. And when my child Nebuch passed away, he was 10 years old. When he was born so sick, Rav Mordechai Zatzal told us, he was a great Mekubal. He told us that you should know your son is a very lofty neshama. And he volunteered to come down here to suffer in order to speed up the messianic redemption. So there are volunteers that God calls for, special souls to come down here to speed up the messianic redemption. So we're very close. We're very close, but we don't want to change God with our prayers. It's a big mistake because God is perfect and Father knows best. We pray that we should be changed. That this ordeal that I'm going through should make me a better person. And it made the entire world Jewry a better person. Right? The chesed and the outpouring of love and achdut, it's incredible. We haven't had it since who knows when. The world Jewry acted like one extended family. Yes?
Nachshon Waxman, when they were going to,
20 years ago. Nachshon Waxman, Zeichat Tzadik Gevurah, yeah? Shem Yocham Domo.
Nachshon's wife, who happened to be a Levine,
Yeah.
I had a dream that if we continued with the achdut that we had during the time that we were waiting,
Then there was...
what was happening in Nachshon Waxman, if we continued it,
Right.
it couldn't come.
But it wore off. The night before the bodies of the teenagers were found, 100,000 Jews got together, not by the Kotel, in Rabin Square, in Tel Aviv. 100,000 Jews to daven, and on the stage, Avram, there were secular singers. You know what they sang? They sang Tillim. They sang Tillim. They didn't sing Boogie Shmoogie. They sang Tillim. And 100,000 Jews in Rabin Square, Tel Aviv, all joined in. Weren't our prayers answered? Halavai, Chaim, we should be able to hang on to that and not let it wear off, yes? Why you make a mishbeach for a sick person? El norafon Allah. When Miriam was sick, didn't Moshe make a mishbeach for her? Dr. Abramson? What did he make a mishbeach for her? His sister was sick. He made a mishbeach for her, no? What?
We're not going to change God's mind. He knows what he's doing.
Right.
So what is this asking for?
God wants me to pray for this person, right? Why did God make that person sick? That I should daven for him and become a better person. It's a test. That's the answer. Yeah, right? That person needed that tikkun to be sick. But God made him sick, that I should have the schus to daven for him and make him better. That's why God made him sick. We're all connected. We're all connected. Right? And no prayer goes on. Baruch Ato Hashem shoymea tefillah. Is it a blessing in vain? No. Every prayer is heard. And it's effective. But again, Rivka, Father knows best. Father knows best. Yes?
I would like to suggest that you consider becoming an Aliyah Shaliyah.
Yes.
Yes, come out.
Rabbi Beryl Wine, may you live and be well, told me the story, otherwise I wouldn't repeat it. When he was making Aliyah from Miami or Muncie, he went to the shliach. He went to a shliach, right? And the shliach says, Rabbi Wine, are you crazy? What do you want to make Aliyah for? He said, they couldn't believe it. The shliach told him, Rabbi Wine, you have a successful practice here, a shtella. Why do you want to make Aliyah for? He said he couldn't believe his ears. He thought he was talking to the Meraglim. Rabbi Wine. So this they make a shliach. This they make a shliach for Israel. It's a chelam, right? It's a chelam, right? Any questions, comments? So when Mashiach comes, the month won't longer be called Tammuz. Again, it'll be called what? Chodesh Revi, right? And Shivos Tammuz, the Navi tells us in Zechariah chapter 8, Tzoma Revi, V'tzoma Chamishi, the fast of the fourth month. What's that? Tammuz. V'tzoma Chamishi, Tisha B'Av, Yeh l'sosayin l'simcha. The fast itself will become what? A day of Now, it won't be canceled, Abraham. It'll be turned into a day of celebration. Incredible. Tisha B'Av will be a day of celebration. Celebrate. Instead of fasting, we will what? Be feasting. Right? You know the story with the Rivka. Should I tell the story to celebrate? There was this monk. This is a true story. In the Middle Ages, poring over an ancient text down in the catacombs. The catacombs are where they kept the ancient text. And he begins screaming, ah! So the other monks run down. Father Gregory, take a pill and lie down, about to have a heart attack. Father Gregory is looking at the original manuscript from J.C. Penney, right? And he's screaming. He says, Father Gregory, calm down. He says, it's a typo. It never says celibate. It says celebrate. Celebrate. And all these years we've been celibate. Oh, it never said celibate. It said celebrate. Father Gregory had a heart attack. Okay. Avram, you heard it's a true story in the Middle Ages. You never heard that? The best commercial I ever saw, I think it won an award, was a Xerox commercial where this monk walks over to this other monk and he says, Father Gregory, I need 2,000 copies of this manuscript by tomorrow morning. In the 1200s, there were no copy machines, right? So he gives him this stack of manuscripts, says, Father Gregory, 2,000 copies by tomorrow morning. So Father Gregory in the 1200s scampers down into the basement, and there's a Xerox machine. And the next morning he comes back. So the venerable monk, the Rav Rashi monk, looks up. It's a miracle. Then it says Xerox. Best commercial, right? I won an award. It's a miracle. Okay, Hashem should send us Besuras Tovot. Any questions, comments? Thank you very much.